And joining us here in person, the one and only Jesse Waters. Mr. Waters, welcome onto the show.
Thank you, Michael Koolidge.
Yes.
It is a pleasure to be here.
Yes. It's so cool talking to you because we watch you every day on The Five. We've seen you on Waters World. Used to watch you on Bill O'Reilly's show. You, of course, have a new book out right now, How I Saved the World. I've read it cover to cover. No, I'm just kidding. I haven't had a review copy of it yet, so I haven't read it, but I know it's hot. Tell us what it's about.
I like how Mike didn't try to lie and claim he read the book and then made stuff up. Because a lot of people who have not read the book will just take the book jacket and repeat lines from the book jacket. And I know you're lying, but you didn't lie, and I respect that, Mike. So the book's number one on the Times list, and I'm very proud. If it hadn't been number one, I would have said that they rigged it against me. So I'm glad I got in when I did, because Levin has a book coming out next week, which is going to knock me off. But as long as I was number one for 1 week, that's all I care about.
It's like the movies. You got to have that blockbuster number one for a couple weekends. That's where you make all your money, right?
They can never take that away from me.
Exactly.
And then whenever a liberal introduces me, they have to say New York Times #1 bestseller.
Yes. Give our listeners a tease of what it's about. Obviously, you saved the world, but remind them why you did.
It's a comedy piece,
okay,
and there's also a lot of insight, political analysis in there. It's the last 20 years through the lens of Fox News, through the lens of a Factor producer, a Five host. I've been unleashed onto the country and traveled the 50 states and seen liberals in their natural habitats, the nude beaches of Martha's Vineyard, San Francisco, and have studied liberals as a species. And I'm, as a cultural anthropologist, I know what their insecurities are and how much hate they have in their heart and how they project that hate onto the rest of the country. So you'll get that and just some crazy stories that I've never told except at paid speeches. So dinners with Donald Trump, hanging on Air Force One, stories about my family, which my sister's not too proud of, but it's a good read.
Part of your charm is that you're the only Republican or conservative in your family. Your mom, of course, who's so sweet. Well, you had her on the show recently on The Five.
Yeah.
She's liberal and Democrat, and
yeah.
And you
so
guys...
my parents are radicals. They were tear gassed protesting Nam in the '60s and voted for Mondale and Dukakis, all those guys.
Sure.
And then I think she was a member of the resistance, because she might have dragged my father to the Women's March. And when I came on The Five, we were first at 9 o'clock. So she'd had a martini or 3 and would send me really hostile text messages about me and Trump. And I shared some of those with Dana and Greg on air, and they said, you have to read these to the audience. So we started reading mom texts, which were kind of hateful. And it became a thing, and then my mom actually called into the show for the 10-year anniversary of The Five.
Yes.
Has your mother ever called into your show before?
Yes, she has. But
how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel proud. It's
but
sweet.
Nervous a little bit.
A little bit,
same
yeah.
time. Right.
Oh,
me
yeah.
too.
This is, my mom. You could tell too, because you're such a cool, calm, collected guy. When your mom, you could tell you were getting a little flushed there. What is she going to say? It was a total surprise.
They didn't tell me they were going to have mom text call, so it hit me by surprise, and I think she was a little long. At one point, I think I said, "Is that it, Mom?" But she was sweet, and I love her very much.
Yeah, that was a sweet moment. That was good TV. And you and The Five, you and Greg and Dana and all of them, like, you're part of my life every day at 4 o'clock. We're on Central Time. My show's done by then. I'm getting ready for the next day. I'm cooling off at 4 o'clock every day, and it's like. And this is something that in radio we try to do, make the listeners feel like we're friends. Even though I've never met any of you other than right now, I feel like we're all friends because you guys have that light kind of thing. And The Five didn't start out as, this thing that was going to be huge, right? It was almost like a space filler. Now it's like the hugest rated show on Fox other than Tucker, right?
So The Five came about when Beck left.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
Beck left the 5 o'clock slot open, and this was an experiment. Put 5 people around the table and have them go at it.
Yeah.
And it took off. I think a couple people in the business told Dana and Greg, don't unpack your bags. They didn't have a lot of high hopes for the show. And the last quarter, I think we were the second-ranked cable show behind Tucker. It's either us or Hannity. And it's on at 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific time, which I think speaks to how powerful the show is. And people, they'll have it on in the background while they're cooking or getting their kids ready. And It's relatable. We're relatable. We don't take ourselves too seriously, unless maybe I don't. Probably Gutfeld does a little bit more.
Well, let me talk about that, because you are both kind of the people with sense of humor at Fox, and you would think that you would be kind of competitive with each other, but you can also see that you guys kind of like each other. You're not friends, and you've talked about that. You don't hang out off TV, right?
My parents
but you guys
won't let
do
me
like
play with Greg. Do you ever have that kid in your neighborhood your parents wouldn't let you play with him? That's Greg.
But you guys clearly respect each other's sense of humor and stuff. You guys click.
Greg's the best,
Yeah.
and we're not in competition with each other, and I think he's hilarious and fascinating. And one of the things in my book, which I talk about, which you haven't read,
Nope.
but you admitted to, I have a chapter when I first joined the Five. The best part about the Five are the things Gutfeld says in the commercial break, because he doesn't have a filter. So I wrote some things down along the way during the breaks, and I put them in the book. Like, for instance, this is a direct quote from Greg Gutfeld.
Okay.
If you want to kill your wife, the best way to do it is take her hiking.
What?
Just like that.
Is there more? That's the
there's
whole
more.
thing?
But you're going to have to read the book. But so those are the kind of things Greg says in the commercial break, mic'd up. I would remind you, but yeah.
Well, of course,
fantastic.
he had to go to the bathroom that one time, which of course made it on the air. That was pretty funny.
I gotta pee.
I watched that when it was happening. I'm like, and I think it was Dana who was like, "We're on the air, Greg." Yeah, that was funny.
He always has to pee.
This may sound boring to listeners, but I'm fascinated by the bumper music in between all the things. My theory is that you each are in charge of the bumper music each day, and it rotates around. Is that accurate?
Greg is more of a DJ, so he specifically picks tracks. I pick genres or bands. So I say, this week we're going to have Fleetwood Mac week. This week we're going to have EPMD, anything. It could be reggae, it could be classical. And so then my producer's in charge of picking the individual tunes. He has a terrible taste in music, my assistant/producer. We had to remove that responsibility and give it to somebody else because the music was so bad.
He's crapping on you here.
Johnny right here, terrible taste in music. He thought Led Zeppelin was a person. And so...
Mr. Zeppelin.
So we have producers picking the tracks, and I'll pick the genre.
Okay. Bill O'Reilly. He's how you got your start. I used to watch him every night, too. Watch you, of course. You have a really non-traditional route to one of the biggest stars on the Fox News channel. Tell our listeners it in a nutshell.
Well, I started in the basement working 2 p.m. to midnight, no health insurance, freelance. And my job consisted of someone would hand me a tape. I'd take a Sharpie, I'd label the tape, and then I'd hand it to a producer. It was like arts and crafts. And I heard there was an opening on the O'Reilly Factor, so I went up for an interview. And he was doing radio at the time, and he came in, and he looked at my resume and says, "So what's your father do?" I said, "What my dad did." And then I think he forgot I was there because there was 30 seconds of dead silence, and it got really awkward. So I said, "Bill, I just read your latest book. It was amazing." All of a sudden, he perks up and says, "You seem like a smart kid. You start Monday."
That was it.
So he hired me, and then the next day he almost fired me. And we talk about that in the book.
Okay.
He didn't
Read the
think
book.
I was articulate enough to be in television. And so eventually I changed him of that impression. And he would send me out into the streets to ask people what they knew. And it turns out they knew very little. And so I would do quizzes, and then I would ambush bad guys, and it took off. And now here I am talking to the Michael Koolidge.
Yes, the Michael Koolidge with a K. Well, you can tell just your kind of mannerisms sometimes and how you, when you're giving a little monologue, there's a little Bill O'Reilly in there. He clearly rubbed off on you.
I think that's through osmosis. Some people say I gesticulate like Bill. I have never noticed it. I think I've done that my whole life, but you'll have to be the judge of that.
Well, Jesse Waters, seriously an honor meeting you. It's like breaking through the TV screen right in front of me because I know I'm not the only one. Tens of millions of people. You're part of their lives every day. And what you all do on The Five is just so awesome. Waters World, good stuff too.
Thank you.
And the book, the jury's out on it. It might be really bad. I don't
We're
know.
going to have to get you a copy.
Yeah, all right. Jesse Waters, is there anything else you'd like to add before we say goodbye?
All good. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Thank you, Jesse Waters. The book, How I Saved the World, available right now. We will be right back on The Michael Koolidge Show. Stay with us.